here. So yeah, we're going to work on a SwiftUI versus Storyboard. And the whole idea is for you guys to kind of understand and compare the two um, from the standpoint of code wise and also simplicity wise. I think it's kind of obvious which one is probably less work, but doesn't mean it's a bad thing. So that you'll see. Hello, Mindy. I see you here. Thanks for coming. So that's kind of our agenda for tonight. Is first we're going to do UIKit, then we're going to do SwiftUI. Let's see. So I am ready to start going. I am going to switch to my slides. All right. So as I said, we're gonna work on UIKit first, and I want to kind of go through the steps that I'm gonna progress through so that you guys understand the structure tonight. It might be a little different, might be similar. I'm not sure, but I just want to kind of cover those things for you. So, in the first step of our UI kit, we are going to just strictly focus on project setup. I want to cover images, colors, and just the basic overall setup. Once we do that, we're going to set up a basic collection view. We're going to use, first we're going to start with just a normal collection view, and then we're going to move to a compositional layout down the road. Once we do our basic views, our basic collection view will then move down to models, and we'll see how that structure works as we progress through. We'll then refactor those models, and then once we refactor, we'll fix the card header, which you'll see more in a minute, and then we'll also work on switching between event type, so going from list to grid and grid to list, back and forth, being able to add that button to our view. And then finally, we'll do the list view in UIKit. So those are the three steps that we're going to do. Pretty easy to figure out. So that's how we are going to first start with the stuff. But let's look at the design again. Once again, you do have the design specs in and project files in the description. Just grab those if you need. And I am going to go over the first view. So as you can see, we have what will be known as the list view. This will basically show a header that gets pinned when you scroll. It'll pin on both, but in particular for UIKit, we have an icon in the top right of the screen that will be able to switch between list view and card view. We're just using dummy data for now, but you could use diffable data source to make this work further. I'm not going to cover that in this talk, but that's how you would add data. So basically, when the September and event is our headers, the items are the individual stuff, and then if we go back to the card view has a date with a scroller inside of it that scrolls underneath the date, and then we're going to be able to scroll back and forth between the cards. Now, when we work with Storyboard, we'll be able to use paging to scroll back and forth. And then in SwiftUI, we will see how that works and show some of the differences between the two out of the box. We can actually replicate both of them in it, but out of the box, you cannot. So that's basic overall setup. Again, list view, card view. So we're going to progressively build onto each thing and make it work. Let me just get Xcode set up before we get started, I need to get my files organized. Sorry, I did everything but that. If you have any questions, just put a Q in front. Thanks, Alandis, for mentioning that. If you have a question, just put a Q in front. I will do questions after each step I do. I'll run the project and then answer any questions that anyone has asked. And then I'll proceed through once I'm done answering questions. All right. I got my starter project. Oops. All right. Here we go. And let's get to it here. So one thing that you will notice as we progress is anything that I do with shortcuts, you'll be able to see in the upper part of the screen. So if I hit anything that has to do with command control, when I do stuff like this or that, you will see it in the screen, but I actually have to be in Xcode for it to work. So if I start closing windows and you're like, how did he do that? That's what I'm doing. Really important to learn some of these shortcuts because the keyboard shortcuts let you flow easily. I don't typically use files when I do code because it's a much harder opening and closing windows our structure, especially when they're nested. So I always find that it's easy to just use Command Shift O and then type the name of whatever file you want. That's how I roll, but you can do whatever makes you comfortable. But typically anytime I'm doing anything in Swift, these panels are closed for the most part, and I just use Command Shift O to find files I need. But let's go over some of what's going on in this project as a starter. So right now we don't have any assets. We don't have any colors. We have our storyboard. It's not set up, which we will do. In the utilities, I have a couple of helper methods that we can use that are yours if you want. This registerable view will give us the ability to not have to, it'll make it an easy way to reference nibs. And I'll show you when we write that code, how that works. This CollectionView extension also does some helpers for making things a little easier when we're writing. And this is an extension for adding corner radius and doing it in a panel, but I'll also show you how you can do that without doing it in the panel. Our EventsViewController, our model folder is empty, and then we have two folders. All of the cells are done. I didn't want to waste a lot of time with doing auto layout and making you like look at me dragging and dropping that. If you're interested in seeing a video, I can go into more detail. This is typically when I work with UIKit, the structure I use. I create nibs and then I bring them into there with code. So that to me is easier and very efficient, and there is no issues with repository stuff as long as your team is communicating. So if you want to see more, please let me know. I'd be happy to do a video on it. But moving on, let's put some assets into this file. So I'm going to drag out this event assets folder here, and I'm going to create it. Now in your starter file, your assets won't be in there, but they will be in the completed folder. So you can just take it from that and bring it in. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in month and date and those two first. And then I'm going to select both of these and I'm going to choose scale, single scale. Now, what this gives us the ability to do is this means no matter what resolution the device is, it will render the correct sizes for every image. Typically, how I determine whether this is and sorry, these are PDFs. So typically, how I determine whether or not to use a PDF or an image, if it's an actual image of like a photo, I use a PNG, and then I'll do at 1x, 2x, and 3x. If it's anything like an asset that is graphically put on the screen, I make it a PDF. Then that way it scales, it works. I never have to update the assets if Apple releases something new as far as retina size. So we're covered. So that's how you do it, single scale. Now, these next two are a little different because we want we want to represent an icon for night and day, for dark mode and light mode. So we have to set it up just a bit different. So we're going to do color set, and then we're going to go icon list for the first one. And we're going to do one more image set. Sorry, I did the wrong thing. This one is icon card. And let me delete this one because I did a color and image. And then this is icon list. All right, so we select both of those. We're going to change these to single scale as well. And we're going to make the appearance any and dark. So from here, we actually may not even use this, but I do want to show it in the way. So for the dark appearance, we are going to use one icon. Give me just a second because I need to grab my notes, which I don't have ready. And so there we go. Okay. So actually I did this reverse. So this is going to be list icon, and the other one is going to be card icon. I normally do it the opposite with the name in front. I don't know why. I was in a weird mood, I guess, that day. So now what we'll do is we'll drag the white one onto any appearance. We'll drag the dark mode version onto the universal, and then we'll do the same thing. Once again, I did the wrong two icons. So list goes in here, white goes in here. Under card, we can just overwrite. So card goes there, and that one goes there. So we've set up our images there. And now I need to set up colors, and I typically like to bring my colors into a different asset file. So here we'll do color set, and we'll start with the first color of our app, which is going to be base card color name. And we're going to do another one, and this one is going to be base day background color, and then one more or a couple more we have. Then we have base month background, another color set. We're going to do a base icon tint color. And then finally, we're going to do a text color with base secondary there. So we can select both of them by hitting, selecting the first one, then shift clicking on the next one and do show panel. And then in here, we can actually add the colors. So for the card color, we're going to use D8 for our colors. So D8, D8, D8. Next one is the day. So that one's F5. So we'll select the day background, click, and then shift click. And then this one is F5, 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 return. Make sure you hit the return. The next one is the icon color. That one happens to be in here already. So we're going to just hit, icon tint is different. It's going to be white, and The first one is going to be white and black. So we have to set that one up. I don't remember. So any appearance is going to be black. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then the dark is going to be white. Month background is going to be a color that's already in here, which is this blue. So we need to select it and then boom, change it. And then finally, our secondary text color is B3. So we'll take that one and then B3 throughout. Didn't select them. All right. So that is done. So our colors are set up, our assets are set up. Now let's start setting up storyboards. The first thing we want to do is, let me get rid of the folder and move it out of the way. The first thing we want to do is you want to go up to the file, up to your navigator and say editor. Then you're going to go into embed in and navigation controller and click that. And then we're going to hit the plus button and we're going to do CollectionView and we're going to add that to our scene. Don't know why it did it that way, but let's try it again. So click and drag, and then we're just going to drag and this let it hit the top of the top of it. Hold on. So then at the bottom, it's going to kind of just rest, and then you might have to pull it down, and then it should. It's weird that it's not doing that. I'm not sure why it's not. Let's do this. I'll just do it through. So in here, with our constraints, we're just going to hit zeros for all of the constraints and then hit return. And then that should be okay. If we need to adjust it, we can adjust it later. And then we need to open up CollectionView, but we also need to make sure that the other one is open. So we're going to do Command-Shift-O, and then we're going to open EventsController. And then at the same time, you're going to hit Option and hit Return. And now that opens split view between the two. And then what we can do is use this little map here, and we can control drag onto the EventsViewController, and we're going to do CollectionView. So now that is set up. So that's there. All right. Sorry, just looking to make sure no one's asking anything. All right, so now we have our collection view is connected to the IB outlet, and here there's a the nib that you can use. I never do that, so all I do is just delete it because we're going to actually use nibs and not that particular way. Let me move over and get the screen a little bigger, so all this extra room, might as well use it so you can see. All right, that's good. So we can go ahead and close our asset and our main, and we now are going to work in the view controller. So just to kind of recap what we did, we added our colors, we've set up our images, we did PDFs, and we did both flipping of back and forth in color. But we're actually going to use tint color instead, instead of using it. But you can use it either way, so that's why I wanted to show how you set it up if you wanted to do it that way. But in this particular project, we're actually going to use the tint color to make it switch back and forth. Actually, let's do that main. We can do it later, actually. Instead, images. So let's work on, let's look at the event card cell nib. And right now, it's just actually a view with a color. if you open it up, all you can see, all it's done is it's set the base card color here. I also, in the properties, set the corner radius in the user defined key path here. So I have corner radius number and set to a number, and the value is 20. So you won't see it rendered here, but you'll see it here. And that's how the corner radius is going to show and appear on the screen. So I wanted you to make sure you saw that. So when I build it, you're not thinking I'm doing some Houdini stuff to make it do corner radiuses when it really is just a value that's done here and not in the code. So that's how that's happening. So we've added our collection view, and we need to update the event card to work. So we're going to add some code into there. So we're going to add event card cell, and we're going to go into there, and we're just going to add these two variables. And this is where that little helper method, our helper classes are working. So instead of having to go in and do names for each one and hit return, we can use the card name as the identifier, and we don't have to go into code and into Storyboard and add them. So that's what that helper method does here, registerable view, and the other one, the nib one, sorry, this one and this one. So that's where those two classes come into effect. So we're basically just creating this, and that's all we have to do in here for now. So we'll come back into this, and we're going to create a collection view layout. And for time's sake, I'm not going to type all of this because there's a lot going on, but I will go over what I pasted. So here, oops, I knew that was going to happen eventually. For some reason, it does not. I push copy, but it doesn't want to copy. Let's try this one more time. There we go. All right. So what we're doing here is we're actually using, we're kind of cheating in this particular part. We're using compositional layout, but we're really not. We're just using a collection view layout. And what I'm telling this to do is I wanted to create a size that is 100% in width, and the height is 92% of the height of the device. We then create an item, and we pass the size in, and then we do an item with content insets, which right now they're 0 for all the way around. Then we create a group size, which is 92% in width and 92% in height. So that means it will shrink down just a bit. And then we take that group size and we put it into the group. So that's how that happens. And then we also have content inset. So we have leading and trailing with padding of 5 on each side. So that way they're not brushed up together. There'll be a little bit of padding when we see them listed out. And then finally, we just create the section. We pass in the group. And here's where we're telling it we want to group the paging for centered. So that means every time once we pass the first item, you'll see a peak to the right, a peak to the left, and the card in the middle with a 5 pixel padding on the right and a 5 pixel padding on the left. And then finally, we take that, we pass the section over to that. And then this is where our compositional layout lies. So that's how we start there. And one thing that I always like to do is create an initialize function. So we're going to do that in ViewDidLoad. And then we're going to create the initialize function here. And we want to set up our collection view. So we're going to create setup collection view. All right. And now we just have to create that function. So one of my things when I first started was ViewDidLoad is great, but I like to just do an initialize and move everything here. And then it keeps me from writing code in my ViewDidLoad. and I try to make sure anything that I write and initialize is a method that needs to get run. So we'll be coming back to this periodically through the evening, adding more stuff to initialize. So we need to just set up a couple more things to get this running. So the first thing we have to do is set up our collection view. And here again is where the registerable view comes into effect. And now you can see we're just taking these cells into an array and we're passing it into register cells, which again is from that utility. And that's all we have to do to register a cell. And it's pretty easy and clean. I like doing this preference than the typical one, but you can do the one that you prefer. So that's how setup collection view works. And then now it's complaining because we don't have anything for data source. So let's delete the extra lines and we're going to do extension and EventsViewController. And this is going to be UI collection view data source. And now we'll get rid of this error. And then now it's going to complain that we're not conforming to the protocol. So I'll go ahead and add the first one. And inside of the first one, we just need to reference our cell. So let's do that. Boom. And now we're referencing our cell. So all we're doing is just creating a cell with DQ reusable cell, passing in the identifier, the index path, and then setting it as event card cell. And that's it. And then finally, we just need number of items is the last method that we need to implement, and we can just return 10. So this now will get rid of the error, as you can see, and we should be able to run unless I forgot something, which may happen. We'll see as we go. Let's change this to Pro Max instead of the iPod Touch, which I don't know why that's the default because I don't know anyone that uses it. But now you can see here we have our card is displaying and it's paging just like we want, and pretty easy, pretty much done. We set it up as 10, and then let's open up just to see the layout section. Sorry, not layout section. The compositional layout here we put 5. So let's just go and put 15 in the trailing and leading, and then let's run it again, and then you'll see how that now adds more padding. So you would probably need to adjust the width a little bit so that it peaks out. So 5 to me is good, but we could even go 10, but I'll just keep it at 5 and run it again. And now we can see it. So you can play with those numbers and figure out what's good for you on this, but this particular one is good. All right. So now that we have our collection view, let's see if anyone has any questions going on. I have Alanda still up here from earlier. Does anyone have any questions about what I just did, how I got there, any of that kind of stuff? Oops. And need to see where nope, no questions. So I will proceed on if no one has any questions, comments, or concerns, and we can flow to the next point. Maybe you guys will have questions then. If not, we'll keep going. So let's go back to Xcode and let's work out the next step. So in the next step, what we're going to do is we're going to work with our models, and these are pretty straightforward. So really it's just kind of code and just talking about them. Each file is created. So we want to first start with an item. Oops. And that's not the item I'm looking for. Oh, I know why, because I haven't created an item. This one's, okay, so right click, we're gonna do new file, Swift, and we're gonna say item. And I have a bad habit of deleting that. All right, so we want to do the item. Here, we're just basically creating an item with an ID using a UUID. We can pass in a tagline, a title, and a subtitle through this, and that's how we can create our individual items. Then the next thing we want to do is create a section. So we can do that now. New file. And section. Boom. Oops. Again, this thing likes to not copy when I say copy. Boom. All right, so we have section here, and in section we have an ID, and then we have kind that we're going to create next with a string of title, subtitle, and then this is how we're going to make our sections with little items. And here we have this enum that's going to tell us which section we want to create. So we can use compositional layout to make different sections, and in this case we're going to make 3, one with a header, one with a card, and one with a list. Okay, so then finally we'll create our new file, Swift, and this one is kind. And we will copy this code there and be there. Okay, so now we have kind. And let's go to section and make sure everything here is good. So all of our errors are gone. Kind is here. And then here we're just going to basically be able to pass in either if it's a card, if it's a header, or if it's a list. And we're just making static variables here to make it easier so we don't use strings and mess up something with spelling because I don't spell. And now what we're going to do is we're going to refactor a little bit. So the first thing we want to refactor is this code here. So we have this compositional layout, but really all we need is this number here, number 9, line 9, all the way down to the end of section. So we're going to cut that and we're going to delete the rest. And so we'll obviously get some errors because it won't know what's there. It'll still be wondering what collection view layout is. And then in utilities, we're going to create a new file and we're going to say layout section. All right. And then up in layout section, we're going to create a protocol. And it's going to be, its name is going to be obviously layout section. And then in here, we're going to say static func card. And it's going to return an NS collection layout section. And we're importing UIKit, so that's good. And now we need to create our struct. So here we're going to do layout section factory, and we're going to subclass layout section. So now we have this, and we just have to conform to our protocol. So we need to create the card method. So I'm going to go ahead and have it generate that stub. And then we're just going to take what we cut from the EventsViewController and paste it in. So now we have item size, group size, section, and just like we did before, so all we have to do is just return section. Pretty simple there. So now we've got that working. So now we have to come back to here and we need to fix this one. So the first thing I'll do is with compositional layout, we have to add data source snapshot and we need an array for data. So we're going to add that here. So we have the data source here, which is going to conform to a section and an item. And then the snapshot's going to also conform to section and item. And our array is going to be array of sections. And we still need to create our layout. So let's do that now. So we're going to do a lazy var, collection view layout, UI, collection view layout here. And this is going to be equal to that. And we add our stuff there. Okay, and then inside of here, we're going to do let layout equals UI collection view layout. I'm sorry, collection view compositional layout. And that is going to be weak self. All right. And we can go ahead and hit a new line. And then after weak self, we're going to do parentheses section index is the first thing. And we're going to do environment next. And then we're going to return a NS collection layout section here. And that's going to be optional in. And now we can do the guard is what we need to do next. So we're going to write a guard to watch for nil so that it doesn't break. That's the first thing. And then we can do, we just need to create a snapshot, and we also need to create a section kind. So snapshot and section. And then finally, we just want to do a switch on all of it. So we'll do switch, section kind, case. And for now, we only have a card. So we'll do that. And this will say return layout section factory dot card. And then the default will be nil. Okay. So now that we have this collection view layout, we should have all of our errors. Sorry, we have one more thing. We just need to return the layout. So all of the errors will go away, right? So we don't need the data source anymore. So we can go ahead and delete that. And we can go into creating our card data. So we're going to create another function here called create card data. And this is just where we're going to set up kind of the dummy data that we're going to use, and also just how all the snapshot stuff that we need. So here we're going to say create card data, and we're just going to have one section with the card, and then we're going to do items. So here it's going to be 10 items, same way we had it before, but we're going to just add the items here. So if you wanted to pass in actual data, you could through those. And then here we have, it's appending the sections, and then for each of the items. So it's running through this array. And then finally, it's applying the data source to that and doing it from there. And then we have two more things we need to do before this works is we need to configure our data source. So I'm going to write that. So here our data source is set equal to UI collection view diffable data sources through sections. We're going to guard this one and return nil, and pretty much similar to what we did a little earlier, except using diffable data source. And then here we're using a switch on section kind as well, and we're telling it if the section kind is a card, we want it to use the event card cell, and that's here. So we should be able to get rid of this extension now because we aren't using it anymore, and our configured data source is good. So now if we go up to our initialize function, we can write order matters. So just double checking to make sure that I have the correct order before I do it and then it breaks. So So we have setup, and then we're going to do configure data source and create card data is both there. So we're going to create the card. We're going to set up our collection view first. We're then going to configure our data source. And then once we're done, we're going to inject it with the data. So when I run the project, it should actually look exactly what we had before, but now we're using diffable data source instead of just a collection view at the top here, which now we have more flexibility. So here we are still getting our same thing. Nothing has really changed from this point, but now we can start to build on this. And if we go back and we look at list or even card, we need to build out this. We need to build out the header where it scrolls. So that's kind of what we need to do next. And then we also have to build out the flipping and switching. So that is done. So our refactor is done. So now let's just work on the card header. So we're going to move to that. And if anyone has any questions, this is the time to ask. If not, I will move on. But I'd like to answer questions. Please ask them. Alandis, Daisy, Mindy, anybody, any questions so far on what I've done, how I set up? And all the rest of you that haven't said hello, hello to you. And thank you again for coming. Bite-sized screencast, thanks for coming here. Jeremy Taylor, thanks for coming. Carlos also, Silva, thanks for coming. You guys, anybody have any questions, please ask. Hopefully everything makes sense, but this is why I'm here, so that way you can ask questions and understand what I'm doing or how I'm doing it. All right, so I will go on. If you have a question, just put a Q in the front. And let's go back to code. So now that we have now that we have our collection view using compositional layout instead of just a collection view, we can now start adding headers and doing all kinds of great stuff. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to use our event card header, and we need to add a couple of things to it. So let's go ahead and close our panel and do event card header. And we just need to add these three things. So our the type that it is, the reuse identifier, and the nib. So that's all we have to do here. Nothing else. So we can go ahead and close that. And in date cell view, it's because it's a different cell. Sorry about that. Because it's a different cell, we have to actually set it up slightly different, but let's see how that works. So date view cell here, and we're going to do it this way. So here we're still using the identifier, we're still using the nib, but we're just using this awake from nib and at a collection view cell. So if we compare the two, so if I open up event card header again, you'll see that one is a reusable view and one is a cell. So this is what we can use for headers, and this is what we use for actual cells. So that's the difference between the two and why they're slightly different in code, if you're wondering. So now that we have this here, we need to go into LayoutSection and we need to add a new layout. And this code is basically really repeatable in the sense of the structure being item, group, and section. So we can add that bit of code. My copy and paste is failing me today. So here's our header, and as you can see, it's almost identical, but there is a couple of things that I'm doing differently that I did in the first one. So item size item is still the same, right? But item group size is where it kind of changes. So here we have our group size, and that is 75% with a width height of 82. So what we're doing, so if we go back to card, if we look at the, actually let me go back here and then I can show you. Let me drop the image or the design into this screen really quick, and then I can kind of draw on it so I can break it down a little easier. Just give me a second. All right, so CardView is what I'm looking for, and I'm gonna just drop it over the simulator for right now. So as you can see, the card view here, we have September, and then above it we have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and this is basically what we're building now. And let me move it a bit over. And then what we're trying to do is these smaller items need to scroll left and right, but the September needs to pin. So we want the month to be able to change, but we want it only to change basically kind of like a side scrolling header. But in this case, it's not a pinned, it's just one. So you move it, it scrolls to the left. And so what we're sizing is the width of this is 82. I'm sorry, the width of this is 75% of the actual width, and then the height is 82. So that's there, and that's the inner group. And then we have this group size. So that's next. That's also that's basically the same size, same thing as above. So here we have it set to 80 and 68. And then we have our section. And then finally, the difference between the card above and header is we have a section and then we're just passing section. But down here, we have a header size and a header. And here's where we're using our event card header. And the event card header is literally just the September in the blue kind of capsule, half capsule that you're seeing. That's what that is. And that's what this section header is. And then we have the scrolling happening here. So then we say section boundaries of supplementary items, and we're putting in an array of items. So here, section header, and that gives us the ability to do what we need. So if we go back to EventsController, we can fix a couple of things and see this happening. So inside of the CollectionView layout, we need to do another case. Sorry, inside of, CollectionView layout. So we have card, and now we have header. So now we've added that. We're going to register our cells. So we need to register each one. So right now we've added date cell. So date cell is going to come into here. And then our collection view, we need to register the header. And we can do that here. So now we've registered our cells, so that way they know who they are. And now we're going to update our section data. So right here, we're just saying section with card and items. But this is just the card, but we need to add a section. So I'm going to redo this, and then it'll be the same, but we're going to add a new section to the array. So here, now we have our header. And then inside of the header, we're saying these are the number of items we want it to display. So we're saying that it's going to do 10. And then here we have cards, and that also is going to display the number of cards that we need. So we should have a header with roughly 4, 8, 12 items. And then the cards should have 4, 8, 10 items. So that's how that works. And now we just need to do a couple more things to get this running the way it needs to be, and that is we need to add a complementary, we need to configure our supplementary view, because now we're using a header, which we weren't using before. So here we're creating we're using the data source supplementary view. We're guarding against nil. We're using a snapshot and a section kind, just like we did in the configure data source. And then for the case of header, we're basically passing in the event card header anytime that it encounters a section of header. And then finally, we want to get in our data source right above. So right now we're covering card, and then we're saying everything else is nil. So we need to do header, and now we'll have header. And now we're going to say this one has date view cell with a reuse identifier, and that one is covered. So now we've covered the header and we've covered the cell. We've added it to layout section. So now all we need to do is just build and run, as long as I didn't mess up on anything. And of course I did. So let's see what I did wrong. Let's see what our error is. Supplementary. Oh, I know what I did wrong. I don't know why I'm even looking, because I already know. So I did not create our supplementary view. So here we're going to do configure supplementary view, and now rerun it. And now it's there. So forgot that one step. Okay, so now you can see we can scroll from left to right with our dates, and it's creating the number of items we requested. And then here we have 10 items being displayed. That's being cut off a little bit on this phone. So you could probably change the percentage. I'm not going to worry about it. It's not that big of a deal. It's working. It's just sizing too tall. So that just needs to be tweaked. But other than that, it's fine. So that does that. Okay. And we're going to do QA from this point. So going back, and we have a question. So Alandis is asking, what is environment doing? So let's go back up to here. And environment isn't actually doing anything. It's passed if you need it. So technically we could just do underscore, and we don't need it. We do need section index, but we don't actually need environment. So it's a good question, but we don't actually need it. And I think I'm using it. I think that was the only place I was using it at. Oh, the picture's in the way. Thanks. I will go back to that view and move the picture out of the way. Thank you. Boom. So there it is. There's the scroll. There's the scroll. So the initial setup for this is a lot. I wouldn't say a lot, but it's more than obviously SwiftUI. But once you have your setup done, like once this is there, and let's say you go to let's say you do another app, this all is like really modular. So you can just set up the same kind of structure and then work from there. So it basically gives you the ability to really create your collection view and then do however your layout needs to. And as you can see, it is taking longer than SwiftUI, but it's not a bad situation. And honestly, if SwiftUI wasn't working, or there was no SwiftUI, I should say, I'd be using this regularly because it works really well. So compositional layout is the bomb. And the only reason I think it probably didn't get as much of fanfare as it should have is because they released it the same year that SwiftUI was released. So that kind of it got kind of the cousin got thrown to the side. Everybody wanted the new toy. So this is, I think, a really useful way of using CollectionView instead of having to do it the old way. A lot easier, definitely. Okay, so we only have 2 more steps to do before this is actually done, and not a whole lot of code to do. So let's do it. We want to add a way to switch back and forth. So let's work on that. So we're going to add an enum, and we're going to basically create an enum that will let us toggle between card and list. So right now we have no way of doing that. So card and list. So we have our enum, and then we need to add our variables. So we're going to add 2 variables. One of them is going to be for our bar button item, and the other one is for our list type. So in order for our bar button item to work, we have to add that to our storyboard. So we'll go to storyboard, click the plus, and we're going to do bar button. Here we go. And then we're just going to drag and drop it on the scene. Now, once we start working with it, it won't appear. You won't actually see it because once we get rid of the text, it won't show up. So we're going to delete the text, and then we're going to set the image to icon dash list. Oops. Icon. Return. See, I knew I was going to switch it back. Icon list, list icon, boom. Whatever it's named in your project, I probably messed that up in this one compared to it, but we're going to set it to that icon. And what else? We're going to set the base tint color. So up here we have a tint, and now we can hit base icon tint color. And that isn't going to change what you see here, but if you run the app, let's see if it lets us run the app. You can see the icon that appears. So the icon's there. It's just not displaying in Storyboard because the icon default is white. You can change that in your assets if you really want to see it, but I mean, just tap it. You know it's there, and you know it's there coming from here if you load it there. So we know it's there. Now what we need to do is open up Events Collection View and connect the outlet. So we can hit this, the connections inspector for this one, and then select events, select the entire storyboard. And here you'll see button list grid. So we'll just drag it and drop it over to button. So then that way we can control which image is being used. So that's all we need to do for the setup. We've set up the color, we set up the icon. So now we can go back to EventsViewController. And you can see here that the connection's made because before it was an empty circle and now it's filled in like an old school Scantron. I know those are, some of you guys are probably not that old, so there you go. Then we have to do our list data. So we have a card data here, so we want to create another method that we can toggle on list data. So let's do that. So we're going to just add the method of our list data. I know Alandis used Scantrons. He knows what I'm talking about. All right. So card list data there. And here we're basically doing exactly what we did up there, except we're keeping this array empty. So when we go to the list view, we won't see anything, but it'll be set up to where we can toggle. And then we have our IB actions, IB action down at the bottom. I always put them at the bottom, just makes it easier. Boom. So now we have our action here. And so here we're just basically saying if it's list type, then if the list type is equal to list, change it to card and then change the image. And let's just verify that I named it correctly. So right now it says card icon and list icon, assets, card icon, list icon. Perfect. Okay. So boom, those are done. So now we just have to connect this switch to our button as well. So we can go back to main and we can hit Command-Shift-O, Events, View Controller, hold down the Option and hit Enter. And then we can click and drag over to our button and release. And now this action is connected to the button. So now that's connected and we should be able to toggle back and forth with the two of them, unless I messed up somewhere, which is possible. There and back. So it all works. So now we've got it working between our toggles. So everything is cool there. So now let's work on the event list. And I see someone laughing. That's pretty funny, Daisy. Um, I don't think Alandis is laughing. He's probably like, yeah, why you calling out my age, bro? Um, so so yeah, there you go. We have our events view controller done with switching and toggling. So we have one last step, and that's to get list view to display. So right now I'll do one more time QA before the end of this and see if anyone has any questions, comments, concerns in the last section of this. So again, we are doing a lot of we're doing like I said, once you get set up, it gets really easy to start adding sections and layouts. So I really like this setup. Uh, it's not something I came up with, but something that I found and tweaked it for my own needs and how I like to code. So it's kind of like a hybrid of something I saw, and then I don't remember the developer who did it, but I should find him and give him credit for it because he started it, and then I kind of revamped it from there. Or I shouldn't say revamped, but I just kind of tweaked it in my own way. So it's got my own little twist to it. Okay, so since no one has any questions and Alandis now doesn't want to ask anymore because I called his age out, I'm going to switch back to the code and we will do the next step. So the next step we have to do is we need to we need to update our list section header view. And again, we just have to add our variables here, the kind, the static, the reuse identifier, and the nib, so that all gets connected. So that's done. And then we need to open our event list cell. And we need to go in there and here. Same thing. We just need to update that. So that's done. So we're good. We're good with our two nibs. So these are the two next nibs, and this will be the header and the data that we need for each one. And then we just have to do a layout for it and add it. And so right now I'm doing list. You can make these even more generic and use them as in a way of saying, like, instead of list and card, you could do I don't even know a name off the top of my head, but you can make these even more generic so you can reuse them on different sections. For me, I'm just using, since this is simple, we're just using list and card. So let's go into layout section and let's add our layout section. So this one is very similar to card, where we have an item, we have a group, section, and a header. So none of this is really anything special that we did earlier, but a couple of points that we're changing obviously are the widths and the heights. So you can see here that our height is 175. Then the next thing we're doing is we're pinning the visibility bounds to the we're setting that to true, and that's how we can have section headers pinned to the top when we scroll. So as we scroll up, the whatever section we're on is pinned to the top until the next one pushes it off screen. So if you turn that off, it won't pin, but if you turn it on, it will. So I'll toggle that one around when we're done so you can see how that works. But other than that, everything else is literally the same bit of code. Like I said, we could probably create a static function that allows us to pass these heights in and make it a little more dynamic, where we don't have to repeat a lot of code. They always say don't repeat yourself, but in this case, I think it's easier to explain what's going on than doing a lot of functions that hide that. So in this case, I'm just showing you so that you know. All right, so let's open up EventsViewController once again. And we need to obviously go back through the same steps we did in the last section. So we got to add a list to our collection view layout. So that's there. Then we need to add our nib, which is in our setup. And we need to add our header, which is down here. So collection view, register, list, and we can just add it under, oops. Love that. Definitely not using this method next time. Okay, so here we have our list section header nib set up and registered as well. Now we just have a few things to do. So first thing we have to do is just fix our sections in our array, because right now we're not passing anything. So let's just add some data. So here we're just doing a list. So we're adding 3 different sections with a list. And the first one, we're going to have 3 items. The second one, we're going to have 6 items. Sorry, the second one, we're going to have 1 item. And the third one, we're going to have 6 items. So pretty simple. So 3, 1, 6. So we'll check that when we run it. In our complementary view, we need to add the card. In our configure supplementary view. I don't know why I'm saying complementary view. So we have card, and then we need to update our default here and make this work, because if we don't, this will error when we try to switch, because we're removing a header and then adding it back. And so you cannot keep this nil. So here, section header, list header, this is where we're doing. So by default, we're adding one, and then otherwise, when it's a card, it's nil. When it's a header, it's back in. And then we need to configure our data source. So let's go back up to here, and we need to just add our list. And that is it. That's the last step into the collection view of compositional layout. So we can save it, stop it, and run it. And let's see. So far, so good. And when we flip, oh, there it goes. We had 3 in the first section, 1 in the second section, and 3 and 6 in the third. So all of our items and data is working. So we know that that's good. And it's all scrolling and pinning. And when we switch, we have this here. So there's like a little thing where I think depending on where you are in the scroll, it kind of doesn't go back to the top. I know there's a fix for that. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but again, minor stuff. There is a fix for it though. And that's it. So this is what it looks like using compositional layout in CollectionView, and that took me about an hour to do. And I'm hoping that it will not take me an hour in SwiftUI. So we're gonna get to that. Before I jump over there, I will create or let you guys ask any questions from this point. And if we have any from there, if not, I'm just gonna move over to SwiftUI and start building that out. Any questions? Well, that's good. No questions. Either I'm an amazing teacher or there's like 2 people in here and you guys are tired of asking me questions. I don't even know how many of you are in there, but nobody wants to ask questions, and that is cool. Hopefully you're understanding what's going on. And also, once this broadcast goes through and you dig into the code yourself, you could always ask questions in the comments. I'll try to keep on top of them. So if you have any questions about something that I've done and you're watching this on the replay, please ask questions. Hey, Roderick, thank you very much. I'm glad you're learning. That's kind of what I really wanted to get out of this. So it's really hard to see your text. So I'm going to make yours a little bigger so people can see. But I appreciate that. I kind of wanted to bring something a little different on the side of the CollectionView side. There's a lot of different and a lot of great other devs who have the way they structure, and I think once you find something you like, you can stick to it and run from there. And this is, I think, to me, very modular, very easy to do. It's a little complicated to learn at the beginning, but once you get used to it, it's very repetitive and it becomes easier as we go. So thanks, Roderick. Anybody else? Questions, comments, concerns before I move on to SwiftUI? And then we'll look at some of the differences. Oh, I remember earlier I was saying we were going to look at something. So let's go into LayoutSection. And let's get rid of this pin to visible bounds, and we'll save that, and let's run it again. Awesome. And so here we'll switch, and now you can see that it does not pin. So again, my suggestion is once you get the code, or when you're in the code and you understand what's going on, play with the numbers, understand what's being affected, so that you can. I like to find out, okay, I know that 175 can be changed, right? I'm sorry, you guys can't see this. So let me switch back, and here. So as you can see, it scrolls and doesn't pin. And I just took out this particular section header here. So once you play with around with some of these values, you'll understand where things are being affected and how it's working and how fractional width works, how height dimension works. That'll really get you going. And then you can start messing around with, okay, I want to take this and make it one function and then just pass in the 75, pass in the width and the height through the function parameters instead. You'll come up with other ways that you'd like to do it and make this more efficient. Because I think this still can be even more efficient than it is. But this is a start, and just to understand. And then once you understand, you can move forward. So that's LayoutSection. And so yes, I'm sorry. I'm glad you said that, Mindy, because I was going to actually say David, and then I realized that you're not. So let's do back to switch. And so we have Roderick here, and then we also have Mindy, who said that she's just following along and plans to look back on it later. And that's great. That's how you learn. And I think once you kind of like let it all sink in and just replay some of the things that I've said, this will all kind of, it'll all make sense once you get into the code. So we are good there. I am going to switch back and start doing SwiftUI unless somebody has something else to ask here. And got rid of that. Okay, so I'm going to close this project, stop task, and open the next one for SwiftUI. So just give me a second. Sorry. I need to get the project open and running. Well, before I do that, let me go over the design spec folder. So you're going to have a folder in your project that says design spec, and let's see. So we have a, let's undo what I just did. So erase. So we have, here is your files, and in particular, the index file is what you want to use, is what you want to open in the design spec. So here we're going to do that, and let's see what this looks like together. And just so you can understand before I move on. So in the design spec folder, it'll look like this. You can open in your browser, or it will open in your browser, and you'll see both designs. So your list view and your card view. If you select any item, it will give you width and height dimensions. It'll also tell you over here what the font is, the font size, the color, the alignment, the weight. And you can go that and do that with all the elements. And so if you're looking specifically for spacing, you can just move your cursor, select something and move your cursor. It'll tell you here's 22 pixels. which should have been 20, not 22. And then here you can see these spacing here. Same thing. But yeah, so each one of these allows you to really go in and see each one. And I find like this is a good way to learn, because you'll get stuff from designers and they'll have just the specs or the designs. Maybe it's in Sketch, maybe it's in Figma, or it's in something else. And so you have to take it and transfer it into iOS. And so I supply the design. So if you want to go back and do this on your own and try it out, you have all of the fonts and everything. I'm not using anything but SF Pro. So nothing in here is like, you don't need any custom fonts. You don't need anything. All you have to do is just set up your colors, and you're good to go. So that's what this looks like. I just wanted to show that before I moved on. And let's go to our starter for SwiftUI. Great. I didn't even make one. So now I've got to make one really quick. So give me 2 seconds. All this code is in here and it shouldn't be. Did it not check? So that's my fault. Sorry about that. So again, if you have questions, feel free to ask. I'm going to switch to my here and just do some cleanup in my code really quick, so that way you guys can see what's going on while you're here. Please, if you aren't subscribed, please subscribe. I plan on doing a lot more content. This is my first live stream, but I will eventually get to hopefully a weekly or bi-weekly schedule where I'll do a lot of different things like this. I'll add to this series and do a different design. I'll do some design stuff in SwiftUI. Anything you really want to see, just put it in the comments or on Twitter, the dev me, and just send me a message there, and I will try and make it happen if I can. But right now I'm just setting up the files really quickly because I did not do that earlier, and I am really sorry about that. So but I would like to answer any questions that anyone may have. List item view. And all right, that's good. All right, got a few more files to fix, and then, well, really just deleting code, because kind of pointless if the code's already there. Day item. And finally, CardView. All right, my last file to change. CardView. Thanks, Daisy, for the retweet. I appreciate it. And you're on Twitter. It's amazing. All right, so here we go. Let me just close. I got like 80 million windows open, and themes and assets. Okay, so I need to just tweak that. I'm actually going to push this. The colors are a little different. I don't think it really matters. So I'll leave them there. So we'll have the blue being the storyboard and the red being the SwiftUI. So when you see the project build, you'll see that red represents SwiftUI. It wasn't what I planned, but it works. So a few things that are different. In particular, the one thing that I do differently in SwiftUI in my project setups is I always have utilities. My utilities usually has probably 4 or 5 different things that I constantly use, probably more than that. But in this particular project, we are only using palette color, and that is just an extension on color and UI color. And basically this allows us to use the base colors throughout the app, and sometimes SwiftUI needs color and sometimes it uses UI color. So I just make this extension so that no matter where I am, the colors will be the visually the color name will be the same. So that's what you see here. The theme, base colors, and everything in here is still the same as before. So that doesn't really change much. And like I said, the assets are the same. They are, there's nothing special in here. So everything is still exactly the same as before with the assets. We don't have anything in Event app, so we're not going to even open that, but that's what it looks like. And so we will start with what I like to do with SwiftUI. When Apple first announced SwiftUI, they said to do to think in small code, or think in small chunks of code. So whenever I look at a design, which we could do now, whenever I look at a design, I try to break down or use exactly what they say, because it does make things easier. So if I go back to the CardView for it, we'll throw that one on first. So in CardView, as you can see here, when I'm looking, we're going to think completely different, because collection views, the way that you have to configure everything, headers and section headers and stuff like that, in here, it's way more fluid, and we can do kind of what makes things work. So for here, obviously this is still a header, but this is an item that we want to repeat, and this is an item we want to repeat. So that's the first thing that we should probably look at. So let's do the date item view. We'll call this the date item view, and we'll work on that first. So let me just open up this, and instead of on the screen, I'm going to move it over the simulator, and then I'm going to draw on it, because that way you can see what I mean. So that way we're on the same page. So, so for here, these particular items are what we're looking at. And so right here, this isn't date item view, date item view, date item view. Then this whole thing is a header that we want to use. So kind of the same concept, but we're doing it a slightly different. So we're still going to create an item. And let's work on that first. So get rid of that and hide that. And let's go to list item view. So in list item view, we need to think about stacks instead of what we were doing in collection views and UIKit. So in stacks, you kind of think of horizontally, vertically, and then Z stacks. So horizontally, we want things arranged in a horizontal stack. Vertically, we want to think of things. So in this particular case, we have our text. Again, let me just put this back up so that it makes sense what I'm saying, because I really want you to understand, if you're not fully on board yet with, or fully with SwiftUI. So here we've got, let's see, we have our 6, and then we have our 6 here, and then we have Sunday, 7 Sunday, and they're displaying this direction. So we want them to display that way. So we're going to think of a V stack as what we want these to be in, because of how they're displayed. So that's really the only thing that we have to focus on in this particular, I don't know what I was doing. In this particular section here is just basically a V stack of items. And that's it. So we can start with a V stack, and I need to start with, again, getting my project. Oops. Sorry, did this again. Files All right. So in list view, sorry, we're not in list item view, but in day item view. List item view is a different one. Sorry. So in day item view is this particular item that we need to do, and we want to start obviously inside of a VStack. So that's the first thing we do. So what I like to do is there's usually a default view inside of here, and we can just command click, and let's actually open preview, and we can remove the simulator because we don't really need it. So we'll add canvas, and I'll leave this underneath, and we'll hide that for now. And we can just open this up to a larger view, and we have more room to code. So now we don't have storyboards, which we could actually do previews in UIKit. I should have probably done that as well. Do that in a future video. So if I command click, I can embed in a VStack. So now we have that. Okay, and let's just hit resume. You're not going to really see anything different. The next thing we want to do is we have a dot in the upper right hand corner. And so we want to have, the way that we need to display that is with a Z stack. So what we're going to do is command click on this one and hit embed in Z stack. And so each one of these, we can change the alignment and the spacing. So for our V stack, we're going to change the spacing to 0. And for our Z stack, we're going to set the alignment. And then we're going to do alignment, parenthesis, horizontal and vertical. And we're going to say dot trailing and dot top. So we want basically for it to be in this upper right corner here. And that's what this is going to allow us to do. So right now we have text, which is fine, but we just want to change it to be a number. So we'll do 99. And then we want to put an image up there. So we're going to do image, and we're going to say dot dash selected. I'm sorry, date dash selected dot. And this should be date selected dot. All right. And then with image, we have to do resizable anytime we want to change the width and the height. So we have to do frame, and then width is 8 and the height is 8. And we want to do a slight offset for this. So we're going to say offset, and we'll set the X and Y. So the X will be 10 and the Y will be -5. And then we can set our font here to be our system font. So we'll say system and then size. And then we want to say that this is 16 and the weight is bold. All right, so we have our text. Let's refresh this screen and hopefully no errors. There we go. Okay, perfect. So now we have that, and inside of here, we're going to do another text view, and this time we're going to say Thursday. And then we're going to set the foreground color, which is when they say foreground color, that's actually the text color. And we're going to use base secondary text color. And we're going to say the font is system size weight. So we can do size and weight, and then size will be 14. Weight will be semi-bold, and we're not touching with design. All right, so now we have that underneath. And then we just need the shape around it. So here we can do foreground color again, and we can say dot black, which when you use dot black, it will not change for the system for dark mode and light mode. So just be mindful of that. You have to use system. So then frame width, colon, 62, and then the height is 70. And then we're going to do the background and set this to color.baseDayBackground. And then finally, we're going to do a clip shape. And we're going to do rounded rectangle with a corner radius of 6. And there's our item. So now our item is done. And typically I like to use the preview to show different styles, but in this case we don't really need to. So the day item is finished, and now we can go to the next step, which would be I moved my steps, so now I don't know. So CardView, which is what I thought. So now we're going to display the cards. So let's go into CardView. And in here, we have text view there, and we're going to put this in a VStack. All right. And then inside of the VStack, we're going to have a ZStack. And then we also need a scroller. So let's do the scroller first because that makes the most sense. So we're going to go ahead and just delete this text, and we're going to do a geometry reader, and we're going to do geo in, and then we'll do scroll view here, and then we're going to say dot horizontal, and then we're going to hide the indicators by saying false. Then we have, this is in an H stack with spacing of -20, and write it there. And then we want to create a for each, but we want to create a rounded rectangle. So let's create rounded rectangle first, corner radius of 20. And then from here we have padding, and we're just going to do horizontal padding. And then we're going to say foreground color is dot base card color. And finally, the frame, we want it to do the width of the screen and then subtract 15 from that. So that way we can have padding on both sides. And so that's why we're using geometry reader. So here we're going to say the width, and then we're going to do geo.size.width. And we're going to say -15. And then we're going to say that the height for this one is 585. All right. And right now our preview is set to iPod Touch, which I never use. So we're going to switch it to that one. And finally, we're going to say that the alignment is set to center. All right. Let's resume and let it change to the bigger screen, hopefully. All right, so rounded rectangle is our card, and basically what we want the card to do is repeat in the scroller. And right now we only have one. So in order to make this repeat, we can just command click on the rounded rectangle, and we're going to say repeat. And then we can just say enter, and we can say, let's do 6 items. And now I'm so used to the beta version where it automatically just works. We can now scroll it back and forth, and this is done. So that we have our scroller, and now we just need our header. So we're going to do a Z stack, and then we're going to do the alignment, and then alignment, and here horizontal leading, and this is center. And then we're on the Z stack, we're going to do padding on the top of 20. All right, so that pushes the padding down a bit. And now we're going to create our scrolling header. So we need to first create a scroll view, and we're going to do horizontal, and then we're going to show the indicators, which are going to be false, so that those don't come on the screen. And then we'll have an H stack here with the spacing of 15. And then we're going to do day item view. And then we can just easily command click and then say repeat. In this case, we'll say 10. Oops. We'll say 10 for the repeat. And we'll just do underscore because we don't need the item. And now we have the scroller here. And we just need to fix the padding here. So on the H stack, we're going to say padding dot leading, and it's going to be 100. So now it's outside of the area, so we can add the last point of our header, which is going to be a Z stack and another alignment, and then alignment again, and then we're going to do leading and center. All right, and then finally we're going to do an image, which is going to be the month-bg, and then we're going to do our text over that, which is going to be September. All right, and then we just need to add a couple of modifiers to image. So we're going to say, actually, we don't need to add any modifiers because it's fine that size. Here we're going to do foreground color dot white, and then we're going to say dot font, and then system font, size and weight. Size is 16, weight is bold. There's no design, so we can get rid of that. And then finally we'll do some padding since it's on the edge. Say leading and 20. Boom. And we can even bump that up to like 24. Nah, that looks a little too big. Okay, September 18 is good. All right, so now we have our first one done. There's a little bit of a, there's probably, if we look at here, there's a space in between. So we could do, right here we have padding on the top and that's it. So if we just delete this padding, and put in a vertical into comma, we'll get a little bit more spacing, but that's not great. So let me just put it back to top and then do dot padding dot bottom. And then let's do 30. Still not good. 40. That's better. Okay. And we're good with the card view. So card view's done. We have this scrolling and we have this scrolling. And as I said earlier, we don't have the luxury of doing in collection view. We have the paging that we can do. We would have to write it ourselves. There's a bunch of people who have written some things that allow you to make this work so that it can do a center align. I won't cover it tonight, but you can make that center align just like the collection view one does. So it is doable. And so that completes the card view. So now we're going to go to list item view and we're going to work that out. And I am list item view. And let's look at that design and just see where we're going to go from here. So let me just open the file. And at this time, if you have questions, I'll let you ask them as you can. So geometry reader. Okay, so geometry reader is, that's a good question. Let me just get the other layout done and then I'll answer that question. Card and list. Okay, so let's go questions and so geometry reader is the question. So geometry reader, is the ability to give us what the device size is. So using Geometry Reader lets us know each of the device size because we don't have that capability in SwiftUI without using it. So instead of using padding for this, for the scroller, I'm using the Geometry Reader. If I'm thinking about it, you might be able to get around without using it. So right now, I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure you need it either way, but you could try without it in this case and see if you can make it work with padding. But I'm pretty sure with the width of the screen, you do need it. So, so that hopefully that answers your question. If you have a specific question about Geometry Reader, hopefully I can answer it, unless I answered the question already. So Geometry, the reason the scroll view has the snap effect. No, that's the scroll view has the snap effect. It's just a default behavior. Geometry Reader doesn't have anything to do with the scroll per se. It is it's sizing. So the geometry. So if I go back to the code, let's go back to this, and then let's go to CardView. So here we're passing the geo is the variable that's getting passed from Geometry Reader, and I'm just using it in the frame. So here it's saying the width, I'm taking the size of the screen and I'm subtracting 15. So if I take this number and change it to 25, then you'll see that it subtracts less and less from the edge. If I do 40, you can see that it peaks more. So that's basically why I'm using the Geometry Reader. If I switch devices, so let's say if I go to the iPhone mini and then I play that, I'm going to just play that one in the simulator instead. But so that way you can see the difference in the two. It will still make the appropriate adjustments, but it will make it based on the device. And that's why there's the benefit of Geometry Reader. I don't remember what the one in UIKit. There's an equivalent one, and it's been so long since I've done UIKit, to be honest with you. I've pretty much been in SwiftUI for the last like 2 years, thankfully. Is this building? No, it's not. Let's try it again. And oh, it's probably, there it is. So as that builds, you'll see, okay, here we go. So now you'll see events isn't working because content view. Sorry, I need to just set it up. Events view. And then oh, I know why. So events view is there and we're in CardView. So this needs to go into here and then run it. Okay, so now you can see that it's still doing the same amount of spacing on this one as it's doing on the, now it's on the mini, but you can see that it adjusts appropriately depending upon the height of the screen. I mean, the width of the screen. That's why I kind of set the height to 585, which this should probably be the same. You'd probably have to do some calculations on the top by calculating how high this is to the bottom, the padding here, and then subtract that from the height. And then the height can also be done through Geometry Reader, but I just did it through just the width instead, but you can do it on both. So that's how that Geometry Reader works. Hopefully that answers your question, Alandis and Mindy, because he came through with the same kind of question, but a little more. He wanted more detail, so hopefully that is what you needed. Okay, so I'm gonna close this out and this, and then switch this back to Events View. And now we're going to work on list item. And I didn't want to go over 2 hours, so I'm going to try not to speed, but I'm going to not type as much. So in list item view, if we look at here, the item that we're going to create is this view here. We want to make it so that this has the date on the side, this little rectangle, and then these text views over here. And then we also want the header and doing that. But for now, we're just focused on this section here is what we're looking at doing. So I'm going to just delete and paste, and then I'll minimize code, and then we'll go through each one and understand. So here we have the 99 and the X, and that's inside of it's inside of an H stack, which is inside of a V stack, which doesn't. The only reason I'm putting it into a V stack is alignment, but I'm pretty sure I could do this, and I can use alignment.center instead. So that would be the same thing. So I was able to get rid of one thing there. All right, so then the next V stack, we have just this rounded rectangle, and we have trailing padding so that the padding on this is separated from the text. And then finally, we have our third V stack, which has the text for the meat. And then we have each one of these wrapped into an H stack. So the beginning, then the text, then the end, then the text, and then the location, and then the text. So all of that is done. And then we're just setting globally, we can set the size of the font size of everything in the child. So everything inside of the parent can be set by default. So here, if I take this and make it 19, everybody inside of the item gets changed. So that's good. One of the benefits of SwiftUI. And then here I'm saying the max width is infinity. So if this grows, which like go to here and I move to Pro Max, you can see that I have more room. The only thing that with this particular layout that I would probably account for is maybe a location wrapping in 2 lines. So in this case, I may probably redo this layout a little bit to fix this location, but for now it's good. But that's the only concern I have is, 1 p.m. there isn't going to be a time that's going to wrap 2 lines, but location could definitely wrap 2 lines. So most likely by default, I would just make it so that it doesn't wrap into 2 lines. It just ellipses at the end. So that's the cell, the list item view that we just did there. Next, we just have to do the header. So let's look at what the header looks like. This one is pretty simple, nothing really extravagant. So list header, and we'll go ahead and just put it in. And then as you can see, we just have a Z stack again with an image and then the text on top. We did this earlier. We have a spacer, which allows us to push, since we're using H stacks, the spacer will push it from to the edges. So that gives us the space we need. So by removing it, as you can see, they're both aligned in the center. And by adding it, it pushes the up until it can go no more. And then we're just setting text color, font size, and padding on the trailing. Again, nothing serious. So list header is good. Hopefully all of that is good and you understand. And then we just have to create the list view. So let's open up list view. And let's do boom, boom. What we want to do is we want to create a scroller, and we want to just create a bunch of list items. So here we're gonna put our header. So we're creating a lazy V stack, and inside of the lazy V stack we can have pin views. So in here we're gonna do a section header, and then each section that we create in our scroll view is gonna get a header view. So that's this here, and this here. And just like we did in our compositional layout, we had 3, 1, and 6. So we have three items in the first section, 1 item in the second, and 6 items in the third. And each one of them has the header. So that's what we're seeing here. And if we play and we scroll, you can see each one of the each one of the headers gets pinned until it gets replaced. So basic same behavior we had earlier in collection views, but now we have it in SwiftUI. And we just have one more view to look at, which is the events view. And in here, we just need to create a variable called state. So let's go into events view, and we have this event variable here called state. So anytime we create a state, we make sure that it's private. That's like embedded in my head when I first learned it. So always make your state variables private. And what this will do is it kind of does the logic for us, and it will, if we trigger it or say, like if we toggle it between false and true, the UI will react to what we need. So in this case, we want to do card versus list. So if we toggle it, we want to show it. We toggle it again, we want to hide it. And so if we add a navigation view, we can do that easily. So let's just start with a navigation view and our toggle. So here we have our navigation view, and we're saying if the card is showing, then we want to show the card view. We're going to change the title of our navigation. We're going to make sure that we're using the display mode of large, and we're in our toolbar, we're using the list icon, and then the action of that is going to toggle it again. So all we're doing is just toggling wherever it's currently at to the number, to wherever it is, and we're setting it false first. And so right now, because card isn't showing, then we're setting that to false. But if card was showing, then we'd set this to true, and then we could toggle back and forth that way. And then here, we're just doing the same exact thing: list view, card view, upcoming events, and then displaying the large title, and then using the icon for the card. And so you can see here, it's working. You can see the icon in the here. And if we run the project, we will see that it now runs. We're on CardView. And then if we toggle, we're on list view, and now we're on card view. And we have exactly what we have in collection view, except for obviously the paging feature. But everything is the same in both now, and you can see kind of the difference in how you set it up. But I think both have its benefits and its negatives. And you kind of can tell which, if you need to decide what route you want to go, I think you can go either route. It really just depends on you. In this particular case, I think you should always go based by design. But this is how this works. And I don't know if anyone has any questions, but I am done. This is all completed. Again, all the files are up online, and I will stay a couple minutes to see if anyone has any questions, and and I'll answer. Otherwise, this video will be up. You can come back and review it, and if you decide you have a question, just throw them in the comments. But hopefully that gives you a really good idea of using Storyboard versus using SwiftUI setup, how they're different, and some of the similarities that you see in each of them. I really do appreciate you guys coming for my first live show. Wasn't perfect. I know I got some things to work on, but I'm glad that I was able to actually do it and pull it off in like a few days. Next time I'll give myself way more time than planning one on a Friday night on a whim and then doing it in 2 days and 2.5 days. So, but yes, hopefully you guys got something out of it. I really do appreciate you guys for coming. And again, if you have any questions, I'm here. Otherwise, thank you. Thanks, Alandis, for coming. Thank you, Mindy, for coming. Roderick, Daisy, and let's see who else is here. Bite Size Screencast, thanks for showing up. I really do appreciate you guys all coming and participating in my first one. And hopefully, like I said, you learned something from this, and you can take back what you learn and grow from that. Thank you, Mindy. Thanks, Alandis. Thanks, Daisy. Lucas, thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to the next ones as well. If you guys have any suggestions, throw them in. I'm working on a couple of other series for SwiftUI, so please keep a lookout for that. And I will have another live show coming up, hopefully in the next week or two. I just got to think of what I'm going to do. But if you have an idea, throw it in the comments, and I will definitely add it to my list for things to do. But they won't be the traditional no to-do lists, none of the stuff you pretty much see everyone doing. So it will definitely be something different. Yep. Please remember to subscribe, like, share, and tell people that I'm out and doing YouTube. I'm really excited to be here.